Welcome to Hoops Rosie. I'm King Jimison, alongside, as always, my man in Cleveland, Karna Venkatraj, and we are here to provide you the most royal hoops takes in all of the Memphis Grizzlies and NBA universe. And Karna, for the first time in almost 6 months, we have Grizzlies basketball to talk about, like actual games. Grizzlies are 2-0, baby. How you feeling?
Great. Excited for the season to start. Texas had a really good bye week. Nothing interesting happened there. No, I'm just kidding. I'm ready for a team that has consistently outperformed to come back into my life, and it's the Memphis Grizzlies. So I'm excited.
If you're just joining us, this is a Memphis Grizzlies and NBA podcast, and we are going to provide you some hot takes. We're going to provide you some great analysis. We're going to provide you some engaging debates. And all of those things are happening today and every single episode. And as we get into the 2023-2024 season, Hoops Royalty is really going from here to like way up here, way out of the frame, because we are going to be rolling out weekly episodes, recording on Monday night. Those should be available for you either Monday night or Tuesday morning. And we're also going to have some live reactions as well, announcing right now that we will have an instant reaction podcast for the Grizzlies regular season opener on October 25th against the Pelicans. Today's episode is going to be a busy one, but before we get into all of the Grizzlies news, Karna, I do want you to give me 30 seconds on the OU Texas game, because as a neutral fan, it was unbelievable. But just talk us through your feelings.
I'll give you 2 words. It sucked. Let's move on. Grizzlies time. It sucked. That's all I'm going to say.
What I'm going to say on behalf of Karna is that I actually have a lot of hope for Texas moving forward. I think that Texas will be able to win the rematch against Oklahoma in a Big 12 championship game. And I expect both of those teams to enter that game, well, undefeated in Oklahoma's case, 1 loss in Texas' case. So I hope that's the case, because that would be an incredible final year of the Big 12 for those two schools.
I don't even follow football like that. I'm really more of a Memphis Grizzlies. I'm kidding. I live and die with Texas football. But yeah, it is what it is. We'll hopefully get them back. But I'm ready for some Grizzlies basketball. That's what I'm ready.
Hey, amen to that. So today we got a lot of stuff going for you. We got some reaction to some more crazy rankings of Grizzlies players. We've got actual basketball to talk about. As I said at the beginning, the News of the Realm segment will be all about the Grizzlies' first 2 preseason games. And our debate for the end of the episode will be about who is the Grizzlies' X factor. Who's that swing player who is going to make or break this season? Got a lot of great preview episodes in the rearview mirror. Check those out, including win totals, picks in the last episode. We got more preview content to come, but today, Karna, I hear you've got a fantastic, hot royal decree for us. That is the gavel of justice. That means it's time for Karna Venkatraj's royal decree.
Player rankings are stupid. Ja Morant is clearly better than the 35th best player in the league. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why CBS, they do it for clicks. I know why they do it, but Ja Morant is clearly a much, much better player than everyone around him. And me being the data guy that I am, I went into the numbers and the advanced stats. Within his first 4 years, Ja Morant has a similar offensive rating to Damian Lillard, similar offensive rating to Trae Young. Trae Young played, I think, 12 more games than Ja Morant last year and only had 0.7 of a differential for win shares. All that's to say is that even despite the off-court issues, which is what ESPN cited as the main reason as to why they put them there, Ja Morant is still effective, and he's getting progressively more efficient on the court. Where he kind of draws in defensive stats, or what hurts him a little bit more in defensive stats, is inability to shoot. I think if he works on that and completes his game, not only is he not just 35, he's a top 10. He's a fringe top 10 player right now. Let's start there. if not within the top 10, I'm not going to debate that with you. You guys can debate amongst yourselves. Ja Morant is a fringe top 10 right now. He takes it to another level if he fixes shooting, and those advanced stats go up. But overall, rankings are dumb. They did that for clicks. They knew it would get Twitter interaction. That's the only reason it's there. Grizzlies fans, if you put any weight into those rankings, I don't know what to tell you. Watch basketball, I would say. Is just watch the game, and then you will be fine. That's my royal decree. I know it's a hot take. Ja Morant is better than the top 30 players or better than 35 of the top 100 players.
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat what Jaren Jackson Jr. said on this issue, and Desmond Bane as well. Credit to Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian for this report, but Jaren Jackson Jr. said he has no reaction to ESPN's rankings. He called it clickbait rankings and said they usually put LeBron James at number 100. Don't know where he's coming up with that stat, but it definitely made me laugh. Desmond Bane said on the rankings, that don't pay the bills. Shout out to Drew Hill again for those reports after practice today. But yeah, those guys get it. And Grizzlies fans, so should you, so should we. These rankings don't matter. If you didn't catch it, what Carter was reacting to is that ESPN released its player rankings. They've gone all the way up to number 11 as of today, 100 to 11. And Ja was 35. Now, we could also mention that Desmond Bane was 61. That also seems way too low for me. He is a top 40 NBA player as well, but those things don't matter. Now, we are going to have a little bit of a game, though, with the hilariously egregious Ja ranking. He was at 35 in the ESPN rankings. And so, Karna, I just wanted to ask you, how many of the players above him would those teams trade in a heartbeat for Ja Morant? I counted 15 easily. Let's see who you think.
I'm going to tell you one thing. If there's a big man on this list, first of all, Sabonis, Cat, they're getting traded. For sure. Absolutely. They're getting traded. Absolutely getting traded. So, like, the way that I thought about it when I was actually analyzing the question was, because the easy question is, like, would you trade this, like, random big man who, Sabonis isn't going to tip the scales for a championship. So I tried to comp Ja Morant to other point guards or guys of similar positions. So like Trae Young, Drew Holiday. By the way, Drew Holiday is super consistent, but in the last 2 years, Ja Morant has blown him out of the water in advanced stats. So if I'm wanting a championship team, any guy under like, if you're over 30, I'm taking Ja Morant over you. Let's just start there. Dame, I get it. Great seasons, great player. We're getting to the useful life issue, right? On top of that, you want a solid point guard. A solid point guard in this NBA provides a little bit more value than a big man. So you're filtering out over 30s, filtering out big men. Unless they're super, super dynamic, right? You can make the argument that Cat falls into that category.
I would definitely, though. I don't know about you. Like, just in terms of impact on winning, Cat was way too high in my opinion in that ranking.
But this is the thing about Cat is his counting stats are really good. And this is going to sound super contradictory to the analytics that I brought up, but he doesn't have a winning mindset. And say what you want about Ja Morant, he does a lot of stupid things. He wants to win. Like, he's there to win. And his actions on the court have only been in service of winning. So filter out the big man, filter out the 30. There's not many people on that list that Ja Morant isn't better than. Let me rephrase. Ja Morant is better than most of those players. He fits better in a championship team, better than a lot of those players. And ESPN did something incredibly, I think it's a disservice to a lot of young players who make mistakes. And I'm about to get on a soapbox a little bit. But you got to believe that guys can redeem themselves. And ESPN and other media outlets get clicks by effectively tearing people down.
Yeah,
I think this was an example of that, and it really, really sucked to see. Because really, he's a he's top 20 for sure, fringe top 10, in my opinion.
And I don't know if Tim McMahon was the one who necessarily put Ja Morant there. It was a compilation of many writers and their opinions, but he was the one who wrote the blurb, and I really respect Tim McMahon. I think he's a very knowledgeable basketball mind, an excellent reporter. But in his explanation for Ja being at 35, talking about the off-the-court issues, we're kind of straying from the point here because you're ranking basketball players. If you wanted to say who is going to be the most impactful on a win share basis in this season, maybe because he's missing 25 games, automatically John Morant could fall there. But that's not what you're doing. You're ranking the best players in the NBA. And for that, Ja was way too low. Here are the players above him that I thought was just a no-brainer that Ja is better than, and those players' teams would trade for Ja in a heartbeat. Kyrie, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Jaren. Let's be honest. If the Grizzlies could keep one of Jaren or Ja, they're keeping Ja. Trae Young, Lauri Markkanen, Brandon Ingram, Drew Holiday, Pascal Siakam. I mean, his team's trying to trade him anyway. De'Aaron Fox, which was, as you hearkened back to in our notes, a debate we had months ago. I'll link that in this episode because I think that debate's still very relevant. But in my opinion, the Kings would trade Fox for Ja in a second. And then as well, Sabonis, as you said, Cat, as you said. The questionable ones to me were Jaylen Brown, Donovan Mitchell, Dame Lillard. I would say that at least Dame Lillard is a better player than Ja Morant right now. I still think the Bucks would trade him for the long-term prospects. And the only people that they've ranked so far, this is excluding the top 10, but the only people that ESPN's ranked so far that I would not say Ja should be ahead of, in other words, these players I think are correctly ranked ahead of Ja, Devin Booker, Jimmy Butler, maybe Ant. At least I don't think the Timberwolves would trade Ant for Ja. Kawhi, PG, Jamal Murray. And then I also think these respective teams wouldn't trade. Bam Adebayo, the Heat wouldn't trade for Ja just because of fit, I don't think. Tyrese Halliburton, I think he's so young. The Pacers probably wouldn't trade Halliburton for Ja. And the Magic probably would not trade Paolo Banchero for Ja. But if we're just saying who's better than Ja, I would say that's probably just Booker, Dame, Butler, Kawhi, PG, maybe Donovan Mitchell, maybe Jaylen Brown. That's it.
One thing that's interesting about Tyrese Halliburton is if you look at his WAR, which is basically wins above a replacement player, John Morant actually has a higher one. And in the last 2 seasons, he's been on pace with Tyrese Halliburton, or in 2021 and 2022 outperformed him. But I agree with your point on potential. One thing I will say is I think the Celtics would drop Jaylen Brown in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just for the fit.
Just for the fit, just for the how dynamic it would make that offense. That was my only addition. Another one, I would maybe take him over Kawhi, just useful life argument.
Yeah.
He misses a lot of games. He doesn't fit well. It doesn't seem like he fits well with PG overall. I mean, I've sit here in our Western Conference rankings, ranked the Clippers pretty high. And I stand by that. I think, Kawhi's still an amazing player, but if I'm starting my franchise over, which the Clippers might need to do, I would say, maybe you make that trade and the Grizzlies get a win now. I don't know. I wouldn't trade John Morant if I was the Grizzlies.
No, absolutely not. Long story short, Josh should be somewhere around 15, which is where he showed up in other player ranks like The Athletic and like CBS Sports, which just goes to show the ESPN's ranking was what Jaren Jackson Jr. called it. Clickbait. They're trying to make a point from the moral high ground that really has nothing to do with basketball. John Morant saw it, though. And he said no U-turns. I love that mentality, and if there was anything that could get John more fired up for his return, it is disrespect. The continued piling on. And I just know he's going to be playing with his hair on fire come game 26 against the Pelicans. But any other thoughts on the Ja rank before we move on?
ESPN's operating kind of like a dinosaur, and that to me was an indication that they are. That's all I'll say.
All right. You went there. I like it, though. So let's move now to news of the realm. And for the first time in a long time, we've got actual basketball to discuss in this segment. And for News of the Realm, we, of course, need those trumpets. When you hear the trumpets, you know it's time to hear the biggest news in the Grizzlies landscape. And now, Karna, that's 2 preseason games, which revealed a lot for us. The Grizzlies have won their first 2 preseason games, 127-122 over the Pacers in overtime in Game 1, and then 108-102 over the Bucks last night in their second preseason game. Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane were the 2 best players on the court in each game. Could point out a lot of stats to show you why, but I think it's suffice to say that they should have been the best players on the court, and they were. By the way, Giannis and Dame and Middleton all sat out of that Bucks game, so there was no excuse for Jaren and Des to be anything but the all-star presence on the court. Maybe Des Bane is primed for his first all-star appearance, but Garner, what is your biggest takeaway from these first 2 preseason games so far?
Giannis is scared of Jay. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I think that So, coming into this year, I think we both kind of knew that the Grizzlies were good defensively, and Marcus Smart and a lot of our additions had the ability to make us, even better defensively. What I think was my biggest takeaway from these first 2 kind of games and looks at the Grizzlies offense was that it is actually really dynamic. And I think Derrick Rose it seems like from these 2, again, it's a small, even if it's these regular season games, these are small sample sizes, right? But the chemistry that I thought would take a little bit of time to develop, and again, we're talking about maybe secondary competition, is starting to mesh well. I think we saw plays with, just different looks. Jaren Jackson Jr. handling the ball. Derrick Rose effectively running an offense like we know Derrick Rose can. Zaire Williams kind of getting involved, and we'll get to him a little bit more later. But what surprised me was not only did our defense look like it was reacting well, but our offense looked dynamic, and there were some key young players kind of playing a role within this kind of overarching structure filled with veterans like Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Derrick Rose. I know Marcus Smart has the stomach issue. We'll call it that. Apparently, I can't say that word right now. But overall, we have a dynamic offense, and I'm excited to see it in action during the regular season with guys other than John Morant.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway, and I agree with it. I do think that the offense might look more dynamic than the stats back up, at least in the second game against the Bucks. The Grizzlies only had 98.2 points per possession. That's at the 26th percentile in the NBA. But your point is well taken, because in the game prior, the Grizzlies were at 108.5 points per possession against the Pacers. Really looked good in that stretch. And frankly, the Bucks game was just a lot of missed shots in the first half. They were getting good looks for a lot of it and just not converting. But a few things I think we need to get to. First of all, right off the bat, Steven Adams. He only played in one of those games, mind you. Only played against the Pacers. It was just rest for him as he continues to rehab. But I don't think he has much to rehab from, because he looked healthy and he looked athletic. Steven threw one down on a beautiful pocket pass from Derrick Rose. Incredible, powerful dunk that just showed he has the same level of bounce that he had before the injury. 4 points, 5 rebounds, 1 block in 12 minutes. A Steven-like, workman-like stat line, but what I thought was much more important for the Grizzlies moving forward is that he didn't look limited in any way. And while they may sit him out at times just to give him more rest, more time to heal, I don't think that his minutes on the court, his play is being hampered. I do not believe that this injury is continuing to bother him. What do you think?
Man's built like an offensive lineman. I'm ready for him to set some picks. No, yeah, he looked dynamic. He was part of that dynamism I was talking about. I think, he's moving well. He's moving well laterally, which I feel like I'm not a doctor, but if you have any sort of ligament issue in your knee, or ever have had a ligament issue in your knee, that can be kind of an issue. I think as we get into the regular season and the pace of the game picks up, I think it'll be interesting to see how many minutes he gets. But overall, this is a really encouraging sign. And remember, one thing we talk about Steven Adams, he's not going to score you 20 points a game. What he's really going to do is he is going to give you rebounds, and he's going to clean up the glass, and that's what we need from him. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and it was an article that I believe was in either the Daily Memphian or another publication, but it talked, and this is kind of flows into the dynamism of the offense, but how fast we're playing, how fast we're getting the ball up the court, I think has been an interesting notion for how this team may translate against a team that may not be as athletic, right? How is that going to translate against maybe a Nuggets team or an older team like the Lakers later on in the season? So just something to keep your eye on, just something interesting to consider, and something that we will discuss in future episodes. But just watch the pace of play and how we're using it to our advantage, depending on our personnel on the court.
The Grizzlies have always played fast under Taylor Jenkins, but with new assistant coach Patrick St. Andrews, I agree that tempo is going up even more. The Grizzlies are also spending more time with their posts on the perimeter. Maybe not the most advantageous place for a Steven Adams, but think about the screens he can set for Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard. I posted a clip on Twitter today of an incredible screen he set to free up Desmond Bane for a movement three, and also great find by Jaren Jackson Jr. on that play. But what it just highlighted is the Grizzlies really missed that in the playoffs. Obviously, they missed Stevens' rebounding because their rebounding plummeted without him. They also missed his screening. Guys like Desmond Bane, Luke Kennard, and John Morant, when he returns, rely on good hard screens to create space. As hard as Xavier Tillman plays, he just can't be the same level of screen setter as Steven Adams, and the stats back it up. Steven Adams has the most screen assists in the NBA over the past couple seasons. I believe that's going to be a huge part of the offense while John Morant is out. Obviously, it will be when Ja's back, the pick and roll between those two, but while he's out, we may see more off-ball screens from Steven to get Kennard and Bane open for threes. So I think that's a good transition to talk a little bit about the two stars on the court for the Grizzlies, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane. In the first game, Jaren had 18 points and 7 stocks. Incredible. I don't know how he was playing so hard on defense in a preseason game, but he doesn't even really have to play that hard to produce those stats. In the second game, he had 17 points on 5 of 9 shooting, a pedestrian 3 blocks, and 5 rebounds. Desmond Bane, meanwhile, had 17 points, 4 assists in the first game, but really broke out in the second game. 21 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, including 4 of 6 from 3. And all those stats, I'm telling you guys, they're playing around 25 minutes a game. So they're being productive in a low workload. What have you thought about what you've seen from the Grizzlies' two stars thus far?
Efficient, and that's what we need. These guys are increasingly efficient. They're developing their game right before our eyes. I love Jaren Jackson Jr. pulling from 3, no hesitation. Putting those things together. I think if you have Desmond Bane as an efficient scorer and someone who can give you efficient minutes, I think one thing that we've talked about is how does Ja mesh with these two other stars to create like a big 3. I think the more efficient these guys' games become, the more that Ja is able to kind of fit into this place, and it's becoming smoother and smoother as the years go on. And one thing that was interesting, I was listening to Gilbert Arenas' analysis of Chris Paul's time in Arizona or in Phoenix, and he mentioned that it takes sometimes years to build up basketball chemistry.
Yeah,
and I really think this year, I think you're going to see a step towards that with our young stars, being able to just be more efficient on the floor with and without Ja Morant. So the name of the game for those two is efficiency right now. Do they need to fill it up? Score 30 a game? Yeah, it'd be great if they could, but we really, really just need efficient points for them to go along with Ja Morant coming in. Right now, in the first 25 games, they need to take the workload. When Ja comes back, let's focus on the efficient scoring, get good looks, go 4 from 6 from 3. I'm down. I'm always down for that shooting percentage. But that's where I'm at.
Two things I think we need to see a lot of in the first 25 games. Number one, post touches for Jaren. So far, he's been dominant when he gets the ball on the post, a variety of moves. He's also seems to have developed more comfortability putting the ball on the floor, attacking from the perimeter, but his bread and butter is still getting to his left hand in the post. It's virtually unstoppable. And as we saw in game one against the Lakers, that can be something the Grizzlies build around offensively. Then the other thing they need to emphasize in the first 25 games is Desmond Bane launching as many freaking threes as he can. He needs to be taking at least 10 a game, sometimes more. I mean, Jake LaRavia took 10 threes in the Grizzlies' second preseason game, so I know Desmond Bane can do it.
That's my guy, dude.
That is not only going to provide scoring, but it's also going to open up the defense a little bit because, as we saw, particularly when it's Kennard and Bane on the floor, it really pulls the defense away from the basket. And when it gets stretched like that, it opens up more opportunities for cutting and for your big guys and Jaren and Steven, Xavier, and more to get easy buckets at the rim.
One quick note on Jaren, too, really quick. You mentioned his post game, and he is incredibly efficient from the post. One thing I liked about the Grizzlies' approach with Jaren was he's putting the ball on the floor, and if you add that dynamic perimeter game, it spaces the floor not just for other players, but for Jaren himself.
Yeah.
Right? No longer is Anthony Davis just waiting on the block. He's just an example. I'm not saying this happened in the Lakers series. But no longer is someone like Anthony Davis waiting on the block for Jaren to get back, because the threat of the outside, even adding something like a floater, will make his game so much more dynamic, or rather mastering the floater would make his game so much more dynamic, and I think he's starting to do that. And remember, these guys are in their 20s, right? They're still developing their games. And I agree with you, Desmond needs to shoot more. Overall, I'm excited for the season. I think these guys together, and that's the biggest thing. All these guys have taken steps individually without each other. Sometimes, whether it's Ja off the bench, or suspended, or Desmond Bane with the injury, or Jaren Jackson Jr. with the injury. This year, game 26, I think they're all going to take a step together, chemistry-wise, on the court, and I'm excited for it.
Well, speaking of chemistry, the Grizzlies did add some new guys this offseason, as we know. Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose are two of the biggest name acquisitions the Grizzlies have ever had through free agency or trades. Marcus Smart still hasn't played. Derrick Rose looked amazing in the first game, 13 points on 6 of 8 shooting, was getting to the rim with ease, looked like his old self. And then came the second game, in which he had 2 points on 1 of 5 shooting. He did put up 7 assists, but in general, I think he definitely still has burst, and he looks healthy, which is what the Grizzlies need him to be for the first 25 games. But they're not going to be able to rely on his offense. A lot of the shots Derrick Rose were taking were falling away floaters, low percentage shots. He can't just get to the rim at will and elevate over defenders like he used to. He's more of a floor general now. And when you have Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor, you should have enough offense to not need a dynamic scoring point guard. And after all, Derrick Rose, once Marcus Smart is healthy, is going to be the backup anyway. But if Grizzlies fans were thinking Derrick Rose is going to be scoring 15 to 20 points a game, I got news for you. That ain't happening. That ship sailed probably 10 years ago. He had a great resurgence at different times later in his career, but he hasn't been that volume scorer for a long time. And that 2021 playoffs with the Knicks was probably the last gasp of him being the focal point of an offense. But what have you thought about D Rose so far? What do you think his role can be?
I tweeted this. He doesn't need to put up crazy numbers. He just needs to be efficient when he's on the floor.
Absolutely.
And the things that you should be monitoring if you're a basketball fan, scroll down into Basketball Reference, look at offensive rating, look at PER, look at those. Like, that will tell the story on Derrick Rose. Not like, oh, he had like 5 points, right? Like, yeah, not the best Derrick Rose game, but we don't need him to be that. We need him to, when he's on the floor, get looks for guys, think 1, 2, 3 steps ahead like an NBA vet, right? And then when he needs to score, get his in an efficient way. Right, 1 and 5 is not efficient, but 6 of 8 shooting is, right? So we need that game 1, not game 2. The name of the game for him is efficiency when he needs to, and floor general in all other times. So that's my take on Derrick Rose and how he fits in. Again, his role becomes a little bit more minimal when Marcus Smart gets healthy, and then finally when Ja comes back. So
yeah,
it's not really something to be concerned about. He just needs to learn how to play with Jaren and Dez, and everything will be fine. And Derrick Rose is smart enough and been in the league long enough to figure that out quickly.
And we already saw some good chemistry between him and Steven as well. Steven's screens are what's going to let him get to the rim, because that is space creation in and of itself. But Derrick Rose, not going to be starting unless there's an emergency. Somebody else, though, does have to enter this starting lineup with Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Steven Adams. In Game 1, that player was Luke Kennard. And I do have a little in the middle of News of the Realm royal decree for you, Karna, if I may.
Of course.
Got to play that gavel of justice. My royal decree is the Grizzlies have enough defense to cover for Luke Kennard as a starter. And if none of the young guys has truly stepped up, if we don't see one of them separate, then Luke Kennard needs to start. Now, I say this knowing that his performance in the first 2 games has been not great. 6 points, 3 assists in Game 1, 7 points, 4 rebounds Game 2. He's just 2 of 8 from 3 thus far, but I think we know that is an anomaly. But, Karna, I got into some Defensive Raptor, one of your favorite stats. And I'm not going to lie, I love not only that it's a great all-encompassing stat. By the way, it's from 538.com, and it means robust algorithm using player tracking and on-off rating. I appreciate that it's an all-encompassing, value-added kind of metric. I also appreciate that it's free. So thank you to 538 for that. But Luke Kennard, last year on the Grizzlies, negative 0.4 defensive Raptor. Overall, a plus 1.0. So you hear that negative and you're like, well, that's probably why Luke Kennard shouldn't start. He's not a plus defender. Well, let me tell you this one. David Roddy, minus 0.9 defensive Raptor. Overall, negative 3.8. Zaire Williams, who was lauded as a great defender at times during his rookie year, negative 0.9 defense. And that was actually stats going back to his rookie season. He didn't play enough to register for Raptor last year. And he was negative 1.9 overall in that rookie year. Kennard is automatically adding way more offensively than Zaire or Roddy or LaRavia unless one of them takes a massive leap. So they have to make up for that defensively. Thus far, I don't think they're doing it. Thus far, it looks to me like Luke Kennard should start. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind him in the rotation. Again, Raptor, you want to look at the differential. Just like you would look at offensive rating, defensive rating, you want to look at the differential, right? You want to be adding more offense and you're taking away defense, or adding more defense and you're taking away offense, right? I think Luke Kennard, especially in our system and what we need on the floor, does that effectively, right? He did that in Los Angeles. He's done that everywhere, all the teams he's ever been on. So, yeah, I think we can hide him effectively on defense, especially with Depoy.
2 depoys.
Yeah, so exactly, 2 depoys. So I feel comfortable, especially having. I think the addition of Marcus Smart makes our perimeter defense staunch.
Yeah,
and I think Desmond Bane is no slouch on defense either, or at least he puts in the effort. No DeAndre Ayton, am I right?
Catching strays.
All that's to say is, yeah, I'm comfortable with Luke Kennard being out there. Do I think if he's getting cooked down there, we should just leave him there? No, I don't think that. I think we should use some of our bench depth and maybe cover the gaps that way. But I think, like you're about to get into, I mean, can we rely on some of these young guys to score as efficiently as Luke Kennard? The answer is almost certainly no, right? So something to think about as we go forward. And this is a cost benefit that Taylor's running in his head at all times. Is Luke hurting us so much defensively that it's not making up on offense? But I don't think he is.
We know the lineup data with any lineup with Luke Kennard was good last year. And any lineup with Luke Kennard and Desmond Bane was incredible. That's an unsolvable problem for defense, because you have 2 of the 5 best shooters in the NBA on the floor at the same time. And it really doesn't matter if the rest of your team provides much spacing. Those 2 guys alone are drawing out, let's say, 2.5 defenders way past the perimeter and that's giving the rest of your team a lot more room to operate. And so I think while you are playing a starting lineup that includes Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams, not to mention Desmond Bane, who's a pretty good defender in his own right, you can afford to have a minus defender out there. Once Ja comes back, it's going to be a little harder. I mean, obviously, there's not room for Luke Kennard to start there, but it's going to be hard to have Ja Morant and Luke Kennard on the floor a ton because both of those guys can get hunted. You're still going to play that lineup. You're probably going to close with those two guys on the floor, but it just becomes easier for defenses to target you. But when it's just Luke Kennard, I think he should start because you have the opportunity to cover up a somewhat weak defender with some of the best defenders in the game. Sorry, what were you saying?
I haven't. No, that's my fault. I haven't done this research, but I'd love to see Ja's efficiency rating on offense before and after, like with Luke Kennard or without Luke Kennard, because what he does offer is a lot of spacing.
Yeah.
Which, as we saw in the Lakers series, was something that the Grizzlies had problems with. So, maybe I'll do this research, but I think that would be an interesting kind of notion is yeah, we suffer defensively, but how efficient does Ja become? And how efficient does Luke become when there's that much space on the court and the defense is playing 3D chess to solve, these two guys who play so differently, but can play off one another pretty well. It'd be interesting to see that this year.
By the way, last year for the Grizzlies, Luke Kennard had a plus 6.5 on-off rating. He was plus 8.1 with the Clippers in the first part of the year. And offensive rating, plus 13.1 for the Grizzlies when he was on the floor. That's in the 99th percentile across the NBA. He's a difference maker, and yeah, I think you're going to end up probably closing a lot with Ja, Luke, Dez, Jaren, and would you dare put Marcus Smart out there? That's going to be the smallest lineup ever. But the defensive versatility of Jaren, Smart, and Bane is going to kind of cover up for those other two, and that's an offense that could outscore anybody. So while you have this opportunity to play Luke Kennard without Ja Morant, I think you need to do it as much as possible. And I think that brings us to why there's a vacuum there at the starting small forward in these first 25 games, and that is none of the young guys have truly stepped up. They've had good performances, but we haven't seen just some incredible blossoming. Before we get into stats, Carnage, what have you thought in general about Zaire Williams, David Roddy, Jake LaRavia?
Zaire Williams seems to have a mindset change.
Yeah.
And I love to see it. I love to see his dynamic offense. He does look not as explosive, and I know that partially comes from a knee injury. Was it knee or back? I forget. A knee, right?
Knee injury, kind of like a lingering thing, more almost developmental.
Something tells me that he's figured something out in his game that has really is going to translate this year more than any other year. And let me tell you something. If that guy figured it out, I think we reevaluate the Western Conference rankings. He can be that impactful. I'm back in. I'm so back in on Zaire Williams. So I'd love to see him play more. Mm-hmm. Roddy is still doing some of the same, like the spin move is cool. I get that. Do I think I would love to see him get some more minutes too? Mm-hmm. Because I think even though he has not been great defensively, we saw flashes of what he could provide on the court in that Lakers series. If he gets the shooting more efficient, if he just becomes a more efficient scorer overall, I'd love to see that. LaRavia. Okay, so let's talk LaRavia. Yeah. That guy's a really, really good athlete. The question 6 for 14 is just not, it can't be. Like, he's just not an efficient scorer right now, but he's such a young talent that I'd love to see him get some more minutes too. All that's to say, my guy, if I'm going into this year and I'm betting on a guy and I'm saying, take this guy to play some significant minutes for the Grizzlies, both in the regular season and the playoffs, dude, I'm taking Zaire Williams, man, which is kind of crazy.
For sure. I am too. No, I totally am too. Check out my TikTok, our TikTok on Hoops Royalty that I posted today. Showed 3 great clips from Zaire Williams in the second preseason game against the Bucks, for which he was Bally Sports Player of the Game. Shout out to Zaire for that. It looks to me like the game has slowed down for him in year 3.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. This is what comes with experience. But a lot of the time, he looked to me like a deer in the headlights, offensively and defensively. What I saw is that when he got the ball, he was patient. He wasn't just rushing straight into a jump shot or rushing straight into a rim attack, which I think is what he usually would default to. He was kind of either a lob threat, a catch and shoot guy, or maybe he would put it on the floor for a straight line drive. Now we see him fake the 3, drive in for a slam. We see him wait on the defender to fly by, then take a step and dish to a cutting Xavier Tillman for an easy bucket. We see him, again, pump fake the 3, take a couple dribbles, get to his favorite spot where he's the best, and that is the mid-range, sink a jumper there. That kind of development only comes with time, and if Zaire Williams is the player that I showed in those 3 clips, he's in for a huge season, and the Grizzlies look a lot different, not just this year, but moving forward. The thing is, we need to see it more often. Yeah.
So with Zaire, I think one thing that is interesting, and I want you to speculate wildly on this. Do you think it might be sort of a realization that he is a role player in this league? And that sort of mentality, like along with all the skill stuff, I think it's stupid to say that he hasn't developed his game more, right? Like we know that.
Yeah.
Do you think that could be part of it, where he's like, okay, I'm now more of like a role player, which is fine. I'm gonna tailor my game to that. I'm going to not try to be like a superstar every time I catch the ball on the perimeter. Do you think that has something to do with this?
That's a fantastic take. I can totally see it. He was just such a role player in his rookie year because he was starting. He started a lot of games in his rookie season and was the clear 5th guy. Like in almost every lineup he was out there, he was the least talented player, or talent is probably not the right word, the least effective player on the court at that point. Now I think in certain lineups, he's not going to be that. I mean, if he's playing with bench lineups, he better not be the worst player on the court. But I think it's less about accepting his role, although your point is well taken. It's a fantastic observation. I think it's more about knowing his own game. Zaire Williams should not be jacking up 3s. Case in point, so far this season, he's 1 of 7 from 3. His shot looks beautiful, and someday I hope it's going to fall at a consistent 38% clip, but it hasn't happened yet, and I don't see any reason why that's going to change. However, he's 6'10", and he can handle. So him taking 2 dribbles, getting to a mid-range jumper, awesome. Him patiently pump faking a 3, attacking the rim, he's going to have great opportunities to finish. Him becoming more of a playmaker, that's a very dangerous skill set for a 6'10" player. So he just needs to accept who he is and not who he's not. And that goes to the Grizzlies coaching staff as well. Kind of like they did with Dylan Brooks. It seemed like when Zaire Williams got the ball for an open 3, they said, chuck it. It's a low percentage option, okay? Instead, let these guys do what they're best at. And in Zaire's case, I think that's going to be putting the ball on the floor, attacking the rim, taking the mid-range, finding open guys. If he's willing to do that this season, then he's going to push Luke Kennard for that 5th starter position in the first 25 games.
Yeah, I think one thing that, just a quick reminder, the kid is 22.
Yeah.
He's 22. So
yeah, just
a reminder for all those folks who are like, he'll never be good. He's 22 years old, so give him a second. He's still growing, dude. I think people forget that.
Literally still growing. That is probably what part of these knee issues happen. But let's just run through quickly the stats for the young guys so far. First of all, credit to Keith Parrish at Fast Break Breakfast for this lineup data. He evaluated all the Grizzlies' rotations so far, and what he found is Zaire is clearly ahead of Roddy and LaRavia right now. And in the hierarchy, at least according to the Grizzlies coaching staff, it goes Zaire, Roddy, then LaRavia. LaRavia put up a ton of shots. He's taken 14 shots in each of the first 2 games, which is up there with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. for the most on the team. But he's doing that because he's playing with mostly all bench lineups. He didn't even get in the first half against the Pacers when the Grizzlies were using a more normal rotation. And he played a lot in the second half with entirely bench lineups. So it seems like, at least according to the Grizzlies coaching staff, he's kind of buried on the bench for now. And he did have 15 points in the first preseason game, 16 in the second. But as you said, 6 of 14 shooting in the first game, 5 of 14 yesterday, including just 3 of 10 from 3. So he seems to be confident, and they clearly want him to get shots up with these bench lineups, but it doesn't seem like the Grizzlies are ready for Jake LaRavia to be a part of the normal rotation.
Yeah, another kid who has time. He's 21.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if nothing else, we trade him and get some value back for him. So,
yeah,
either way.
And then David Roddy, 11 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists against the Bucks. That's the second game. 9 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists against the Pacers. Definitely a high-energy guy, a guy I still enjoy watching play, but there are too many possessions where he is driving aimlessly to the rim and throwing up shots that have no chance. I would like to see him exercise some of the patience that we have seen from Zaire Williams so far this season, because David Roddy's got a lot to his game, including a little bit of shooting and an incredible size advantage on a lot of the guys who are guarding him. And I mean in girth, not just height. And so as he can continue to learn to kind of play the slow game, maybe even get to a little bit of a post up against smaller guys, that's going to be a really effective way for him to contribute. At this point, I absolutely agree with you, Karna. Zaire is the young player I'm betting on to take a leap this season.
One quick thing about Roddy, his game strikes me right now as, jack of all trades, master of none. I don't know the exact phrase, but he's good at a lot. He's good at a lot of different things, but he's, I feel like, almost NBA level at nothing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that has been a struggle. I think if he figures it out and adopts almost, and this is a comp, I guess, body-wise, but also can be a comp how they play the game. But like almost a PJ Tucker, right?
Yeah.
A high-energy guy who's going to be solid defensively, like focus on your defense, focus on your ability to move laterally, and then, yeah, you become a specialized offensive player, whether it's shooting, whether it's passing, it should be shooting. Then you just patter your game after that.
Yeah.
He's doing too much right now.
He's a tweener.
Yeah, he's a tweener. He's a tweener
a
body-wise and game-wise.
Yeah.
And he can't fix he can't grow 3 inches. So fix your game. And
yeah.
I think the way that you fix your game is focusing on rebounding, defense, high-energy defense, and shooting. And I think he will become a really valuable member, especially in those later dog days when we get into, to adopt a baseball term, hopefully, the dog days of summer.
Yeah.
And we're playing for meaningful hardware. I think David Roddy can be an addition if he patterns his game differently.
That's a good point. I definitely think that there's something there with his energy. I at certain points in the season, he was one of the guys I most liked to see coming off the bench because I knew he was just going to do something. And David the Body Roddy is an elite nickname too. I don't want that nickname going anywhere. I don't want that body going anywhere. But he does need to become more of a specialist, and we'll see what he actually ends up emphasizing. But yeah, right now, Zaire looks like he just maybe is taking a year 3 leap. We will hope to see that come to fruition. But Karna, we got one more segment. We're going to keep this one super short, but now we move into the Royal Court, and for that, let's hear a dribble. In case you forgot, it's no longer the King's Court, it's the Royal Court, and this is the segment where we have a debate. Sometimes it's quite heated. Sometimes we pretty much agree, but we'll still provide you some great insight anyway. This week, we're going to talk about who is the X factor for the Grizzlies this season. Karna, I'll let you go first. Who is that player whose season is going to swing what the Grizzlies are capable of achieving in 2023-2024.
I'm going to stick with true to me and go with a big man. I'm going to go with Jaren Jackson Jr. I think we have talked up and down since almost our first podcast ever that this guy has MVP level talent.
True.
And has an MVP level of defense. This guy becomes increasingly important with Ja Morant on the floor, off the floor. They will go as far as he will take them for a couple of reasons. One, his dynamic offense, right? He is developing a perimeter game, whether it's driving or shooting, and the post game has been solidified. The question is, does he have the confidence to put all of that together when you're playing an elite defender like Giannis, when you're playing an elite defender like AD in the dog days of summer?
Yeah.
So on the offensive side of the ball, we have that. On the defensive side of the ball, he's well established, right? He's deep boy. And the fact that people have anyone above him to repeat as T-Boy, I don't know if you saw that, but like I think on Vegas odds it has him at 7% to repeat as D-Boy. Insane disrespect for the Grizzlies. Insane disrespect for Jaren Jackson Jr. He is my X factor because of what he can do on both sides of the ball and what he provides as far as a physical presence for the Grizzlies. He's my guy.
Yeah. Well, I wish we weren't going pure chalk, but I think it's just the reality that the Grizzlies' future is so tied up in their 3 stars. Jaren Jackson Jr., as you just mentioned, his upside is basically equivalent to the Grizzlies' upside. In other words, if Jaren Jackson Jr. ascends to the Giannis-like comparison that he draws, then the Grizzlies might be a dynasty. And at the same time, if he kind of stays where he's at right now, the best defensive player in the league, a good offensive player, but with major limitations, including really no passing ability whatsoever, then the Grizzlies are going to need a lot from their other guys to get the championship level. So I absolutely see Jaren as an X factor as well, but I'm going to go with Desmond Bane. And again, we're saying stars, which doesn't really sound like an X factor. I was really trying to rack my brain, think, okay, Zaire Williams. Well, we talked about him a lot today already. Yeah, if Zaire Williams hits, then the Grizzlies are headed to a whole new level because a 6'10" wing is exactly what they're missing, okay? And I was like, okay, Luke Kennard, like his lineup data, incredible, provides the spacing the Grizzlies need. Again, we've already talked about him, and with both those guys, if they kind of stay who they are, it doesn't destroy the Grizzlies' season. And so I don't really see that as an X factor. The X factor is Desmond Bane. The Grizzlies have consolidated around their 3 stars, and that means those 3 stars have to all be really, really elite. If Desmond Bane plays like an all-star this season, the Grizzlies will be fine without Ja and a top contender in the NBA once he's back. But the Grizzlies are relying on Desmond Bane to make a leap this season. They dropped the bag on him this offseason, as they well should, and now it's time for him to pay those bills. The player we saw before the toe injury last season, that player was an all-star, borderline all-NBA, and the perfect running mate in the backcourt to Ja Morant. After the toe injury, he just wasn't quite the same. I mean, he still averaged over 20 points a game, still an incredible three-point shooter, but the mobility was certainly limited. I can't wait to see him healthy, and I just see a huge swing between what he does this season and what the Grizzlies do this season. If he is everything I think Desmond Bane can be, like a close to 25 point per game scorer on high efficiency and getting rebounds, assists, playing good defense, the Grizzlies are going to be contenders in the West. If Desmond Bane stays where he's at right now, they're going to be fighting to stay out of the play-in.
I agree. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Again, it goes back to efficiency for me, right?
Yeah.
Can these guys, without Ja Morant on the floor, be efficient, and then when he comes back, be equally as efficient?
Yeah.
So I think that will tell the story, especially the 2 guys are X factor. Kind of the overarching X factor for our 2 guys is whether they can stay efficient defensively, offensively, in all phases of the game. I think that will really determine how the Grizzlies season, because Ja's going to Ja. We know that. In all phases of the game, Ja's going to do his thing. It's just depending on how our other two stars react in those moments and stay efficient in those moments.
Yeah, that's a great point. Are the Grizzlies' other two stars ready to be collectively the guy? We know that they are both very, very talented offensive players, but they have not usually had to carry that load by themselves. And when they have, they've had a point guard like Tyus Jones, who is quite the offensive factor in and of itself. Now, Marcus Smart, better player than Tyus Jones, absolutely. But he's a different type of player. He's not necessarily going to be setting up Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane as cleanly as Tyus Stones once did. It's going to be on Jaren and Desmond to generate more of their own offense. I think they're capable, but that is going to be the biggest question for those first 25 games is, are those guys ready to lead the offense? But Karna, we've gone through our royal decrees, gone through our news of the realm, King's Court as well, Royal Court. And you got any more thoughts as we wrap this up?
Free Tyus Jones.
Free Tyus Jones. I loved your tweet about that. Yeah. Give Karna all the credit for that. Tyus looks so sad.
Free him. Get him to a contender. Don't let him be on the Wizards, bro. They're such a dumpster fire.
I would love though if he averages like 20 and 10 this season. Wouldn't that be awesome?
I would love for him to be an all-star, but also free him, bro. He deserves a ring.
He does deserve a ring, and let me tell you, that ain't happening in Washington for like a decade minimum. I don't know if ever. But that is it for us at Hoops Royalty. Thanks for listening along to all these Royal Hoops takes about the Memphis Grizzlies, about the NBA in general. We hope you enjoyed it. We will be back next Monday, and Monday is going to become our normal recording day. We know we haven't followed a very set schedule to this point. We're going to do our very best to stay on that schedule. We will also be recording an instant reaction to the Grizzlies' first game of the season, October 25th, against the Pelicans. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe on YouTube. 5-star reviews, nice comments wherever you listen to this podcast. Follow us on social media. I'm posting a lot on Twitter, quite a bit on Instagram and TikTok as well. My man Karna is becoming a content creator. He's going to have some great things rolling out for you on the socials as well. So please follow us on social media. We promise we'll have good content there to pair with this wonderful podcast. And most of all, thank you for listening and spread the word. Grizzlies fans, Grizzlies haters, we want them all listening. We believe we've got some great takes to share, and they get even better as the audience grows. And please respond in comments. Tell us where we're wrong. Tell us where we're right. We would love to interact with y'all as well. So I'm King Jimison, alongside, as always, Karna Venkatraj. This has been Hoops Royalty. Have a great rest of your night.